Welcome to the Quotive Corner. However this moment finds you, early in the morning before the day gathers speed, somewhere in the middle of your responsibilities, or later tonight when things finally slow down, I'm glad you've taken a few minutes to pause and think. Today's quote is short, direct, and a little uncomfortable because it forces us to examine the balance between compassion and justice. Mercy to the guilty is cruelty to the innocent. This line is attributed to Scottish philosopher Adam Smith. Most people know Smith as the father of modern economics, the author of The Wealth of Nations. But Smith was not only an economist, he was a moral philosopher. In fact, before he wrote about markets, he wrote about ethics in his book, The Theory of Moral Sentiments. He spent a great deal of time thinking about how societies balance sympathy, justice, and responsibility. And this quote sits squarely in that tension. Mercy feels noble. It appeals to our better instincts. We admire forgiveness. We admire compassion. We admire the impulse to soften punishment when someone shows remorse. But Smith's warning is not about eliminating mercy. It's about understanding the consequences of misplacing it. When mercy is extended without consideration of justice, someone else bears the cost. And often, that someone is innocent. The quote forces us to think about justice not just from the perspective of the offender, but from the perspective of those who are harmed by wrongdoing. If a society repeatedly excuses harmful behavior in the name of compassion, the message received by victims is very different. It tells them their suffering is negotiable. Justice exists, in part, to protect those who have done nothing wrong. This is where Smith's moral philosophy becomes interesting. In the theory of moral sentiments, he emphasized the human capacity for sympathy, our ability to feel concern for others. But he also believed sympathy must be balanced with impartial judgment. Compassion alone cannot sustain a just society. We've reflected before here at the Quotive Corner on the importance of balance, knowledge paired with integrity, ambition paired with humility, urgency paired with planning. Smith's observation fits that same pattern. Mercy is valuable, but when separated from justice, it becomes distortion. And distortions have consequences. Imagine a community where harmful acts are consistently overlooked. The people most affected are not the offenders. They are the law-abiding individuals who begin to feel unprotected. Trust erodes, confidence in institutions weakens, order starts to fray. Smith understood that justice is not merely about punishment, it's about stability. It sends signals. When wrongdoing is addressed fairly, society communicates that certain boundaries matter. When those boundaries are ignored or inconsistently enforced, uncertainty grows. Now, this quote can be misinterpreted if taken too rigidly. It does not mean mercy should never exist. A purely punitive system without room for forgiveness becomes harsh and mechanical. Human beings are capable of change, and justice systems that ignore redemption lose their humanity. But Smith's insight reminds us that mercy must be thoughtful. Mercy is powerful precisely because it is selective. If mercy becomes automatic, it stops being mercy. It becomes permissiveness, and permissiveness shifts the burden away from those who commit harm and onto those who endure it. This tension appears everywhere, not just in legal systems. In leadership, ignoring destructive behavior within a team in the name of kindness often harms the people who are working with integrity. In parenting, failing to address harmful actions in children can unintentionally create unfairness among siblings. In personal relationships, repeatedly excusing hurtful patterns may eventually damage trust. Mercy without boundaries can quietly reward the wrong behavior. And yet, the opposite extreme is also dangerous. A world without mercy becomes cold and unforgiving. Justice without compassion can become rigid and cruel. So the challenge is not choosing between mercy and justice. The challenge is balancing them. Smith believed that justice forms the minimum structure required for society to function. Mercy operates above that structure, not instead of it. Justice protects, mercy restores. When used wisely, the two reinforce each other. When confused, they undermine each other. This is why the quote still resonates centuries later. It captures a difficult truth in a single sentence. Decisions about compassion are never isolated. They ripple outward. Every act of mercy toward one person affects someone else, and responsible compassion requires awareness of that ripple. So here's something worth reflecting on. When you think about mercy, in your personal life, in leadership, in society, where does it belong? When does it strengthen justice, and when might it weaken it? These are not simple questions. They require judgment, empathy, and sometimes courage, because the most difficult moral decisions rarely involve choosing between good and evil. They involve choosing how two good principles should coexist. Mercy is good. Justice is good. Wisdom lies in knowing how to hold both without sacrificing either. Thanks for spending a few minutes here at the Quotive Corner. If this reflection made you reconsider the relationship between compassion and responsibility, consider sharing it with someone who values thoughtful discussion. And remember, wisdom isn't in the quote, it's in the reflection. See you in the next episode.